Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. This is the second session of the best practice webinar of the series, Resilient and Optimized Power Grids. This session is co-organized with the International Copper Association, ICA. And my name is Natalia. I am a manager of the Renewables Grid Initiative, and I'll be the moderator for today. Before we start with the content itself, I wanted to go through a bit of the agenda for today. So first of all, I'll go through a short introduction on RGI and why we are tackling this topic. Then I'll pass the word to ICA to set the scene on the copper sector side of things. We'll then hear from Aurubis on their best practice showcase. And finally, also Europa Cable, who will share some industry insights. Finally, we'll have a Q&A session where we can hear a bit more from your side, your questions and comments. So before we start the webinar itself, I just wanted to go through some rules on housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded and will be available afterwards in our website, so in the webinar webpage, and also in RGI's YouTube channel. And on that note, I ask you to keep, please, your microphone off to avoid any interference, but you're welcome to leave your camera on so that we can see some faces joining us today. I also ask you to rename yourself, to rename your organization, so that we know who are the people joining us today. And finally, during the Q&A session, we use Slido. I can already share that with you so that you can see the questions. So you can use the Slido for any questions that you might have. Yes, I'll share in a bit. Then continuing, before we start with the content itself, and then I'll share the Slido on the chat as well. I just wanted to introduce RGI for those who might not be familiar with us. So the Renewables Grid Initiative is a unique collaboration between transmission system operators and climate and environmental NGOs. We have diverse members across Europe and also supporting members from the industry and conservation side. So Europa Cable is joining us today, and we also have TNT Europe and IUCN. Our main goal is to basically work with our ecosystem of actors to make sure that grid development is made in a way that's fair, transparent, and sustainable, while also meeting the goals of full decarbonization in line with the Paris Agreement. And on that note, one of the main exercises that we have within RGI is to share best practices. It's in our DNA. And we try to really share as much as possible so that other stakeholders are inspired and replicate and really to power change. So part of our work is really to collect practices, which is done also through our good practice database, but also organizing events such as the one today to talk about them and really promote a dialogue. And one of the things that we are very proud of is the RGI Grid Awards, which is recognizing good practices in the grid sector, and not only from grid operators, but across different stakeholders supporting grid integration and the energy transition. So looking into our work specifically, we work in 3 dimensions. Mainly today, I will tackle the technical dimension, which is grids and energy systems, which address the questions and challenges of modeling, planning, and implementation of a decarbonized energy system. But the other 2 dimensions are very much in synergy with our work, particularly energy and nature, which tackles the environmental side of things, making sure that the infrastructure is developed both on onshore and offshore in coherence with nature and biodiversity, but also that different stakeholders, so in energy society, we ensure that different stakeholders are involved in the processes so that this is a transparent transition. So then zooming in specifically on the topic for today, we are talking about the topic of circularity and supply chains, which we've been addressing since 2024 in RGI, and particularly this relates to the material needs for the energy transition. So as we accelerate the energy transition, there is need for more infrastructure to be deployed, which then leads to more components and equipment required. And at the same time, this also means more material, more manufacturing capacity that will be needed. And basically, the conclusion is that the energy transition is indeed a materials transition. And considering that this also impacts the energy transition, so in particularly increasing the costs and could create supply chain disruptions, and also considering the strong competition between sectors and technologies, but also how Europe is fairly dependent on importation from other world regions. We've been looking at the different concepts within the EU policy landscape. So basically trying to understand how can we make the European context more resilient, more competitiveness, more affordable, but also secure the supply of different infrastructure. And in that sense, of course, these concepts are very much interrelated. And we see circularity really as a path to reduce these dependencies, but also increase competitiveness, resiliency, and affordability. And then when we're talking about circularity, we also recognize that it brings benefits overall to society, to the environment, to ecosystems, and also economical benefits such as the security of supply. And it's very important to note that circularity goes beyond just recycling, that strategies should incorporate optimization, efficiency, and lifetime extension. But no webinar would be possible where we tackle everything. So today we are zooming in into mainly these two parts of the circle and looking in particularly to the raw material side of things. But also we have Europa Cable with the cable part of things as well. So we've been talking about this throughout different years in different formats, but this specific series really tries to create awareness and create an environment where everyone can discuss on this topic. So I'm really over my time already, and I'll pass the word then to Olivier, who will continue with setting the scene and sharing a bit more about the copper side of things.
Thank you, Natalia. So let me share my screen first. Okay. Okay, I hope it's okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. To start my presentation, I will say a few words about our organization, the ICA, the International Copper Association, which is the organization of copper producers. Our members are the copper miners, smelters, and refiners, and they account for nearly 50% of the global copper production. And for some times now, we have also been welcoming major OEMs. So as a professional organization, we promote, we protect, and we defend copper. I'm Olivier Tissot. I'm responsible for the power cable market in Europe, and I'm part of the defend side. So we defend and sustain copper demand in the top markets, so copper cable. And I have colleagues across Europe and in the world working on transformers, motors, electrical vehicle, or heat exchange. So as an introduction, I will stop there and try to have a look at the EU copper supply chain. And I will start with a number. The total EU demand across all semi-fabricated copper products is 4.1 million tons. Okay, and this is what we need on a yearly basis. The question behind is where the copper is coming from. 20% is extracted and processed in the EU. Another 20% is processed in the EU from imported copper concentrate. And 10% are imported refined copper. So the question now here is, where is the 50% remaining? They are coming from recycling. Nearly half of the EU copper demand is made by recycling capacity. So it's a good news. Yes, copper has one of the highest recycling rates of any engineering material. Close to 50% of EU copper supply comes from recycled resources. But recycling alone will not meet the projected demand because we can only recycle what has been used already. And I will illustrate this through this scheme. So what you see on the screen is the world refined copper usage from the early 20th century to almost nowadays. So you can see it's constantly increasing, and roughly the refined copper usage doubles every 25 years. So as already said, we can only recycle what has been used already. So, and the average lifetime of products containing copper is about 25 years. So you have these two figures. Copper refined usage roughly doubles every 25 years, and the average time life of a product containing copper is 25 years. So if we make the projection, if we go 25 years back, we see that the maximum theoretical recycling rate is about 50%. But if we look further, the recycling rate in practice, as a global average, is only 33%. What does it mean? It means that in Europe, we are really performing when it comes to recycling, but at global level, there are room for improvement. Okay, this doesn't mean that there is no room for improvement for optimizing the copper collection rate in Europe. For instance, we can make product designed for sustainability. So you can easily remove copper part or other raw material from this product in an easy way that can facilitate the recycling. We can have also incentives to improve collection rates, and also innovation is important because progress in sorting technologies, for instance, trained by AI systems or innovative shredding, can be important, can help optimizing the copper collection rate. I don't have a lot of time, but I just want to give you some key components when it comes to copper circularity. So copper is a strategic pillar of the green transition and an essential raw material for grids because it's widely used in cables, in transformers, and the circularity of copper depends on improved collection rather than restrictive recycled content targets or mandates. I know there is a trend to consider that 100% recycled content is really the straightforward way to decarbonize product. But the thing is that if everyone is chasing for recycled content, scrap, etc., there will be distortion on the market. Why? Because the copper recycling value chain is already highly efficient. The manufacturing industry select carefully the optimal material blend, primary and secondary, that means recycling, and melting process for each application. If everyone is chasing for recycled content, there will be distortion for sure. So increased recycled content faces strict limits due to global scrap availability and technological and manufacturing reasons. Just one example, the wire rods, which is the starting point to make cables and winding wire. This product required a very high purity of copper because we need a very good conductivity. So we need high grade copper scrap, and it's not available everywhere for everyone. And finally, high recycled content production solution exists. I mean, closed loop are there. We can make product with 100% recycled content, but at the moment, this remains a niche that cannot be replicated at a large scale. Okay, so this is for the introduction. Now we will see how everything go into practice with Tanya. And I will stop sharing. That's it.
Thanks a lot, Olivier. Before I pass the word to Tanya, just to remind everyone that I sent the invitation to Slido, so you can already open it and start asking questions throughout the different speakers' presentations. So feel free to add questions there. And now I'll pass the word then to Tanya to present the best practice showcase.
Yes.
On Aurubis.
I hope everyone can hear me and see the slides now in full screen. If not, please speak up because I don't see you anymore. Yeah, I'm Tanya Winter.
Sorry to interrupt you. We do not see the slides.
You do not see the slides. Okay. Did everything as before. Let's... Do you see my screen now without the slide?
Yes.
Right? Okay. Yeah, I'm not so convenient with Zoom, I have to say. Do you now see a slide?
Yes, now it is there.
Okay, perfect. So that's the title slide. So hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with you today virtually. Thank you so much for the invitation. Yeah, I'm Tanya Winter. I've been with Aurubis for more than a decade. I've been in the copper products industry my entire life, pretty much. And I'm currently in the role of head of sales for all our global copper wire rod we produce. I'll show you a bit more, of course, details on that later. I'm also, a happy member of the ICA and some of the councils. So with Olivier and his colleagues, as well as in an LME council. And I'm a co-founder of Women for Metals. And this topic here is very close to my daily work and also my heart. And I'm happy to see several of our customers and end customers here online today. So as a short introduction, of course, we've heard that from you, Natalia. We are pretty much in materials transition. So metals are kind of the new oil. They are essential for our modern life. They are foundation of our modern life, of course. And some people refer to not only the Iron Age, but the age of copper, nickel, and lithium. So it's very good to bring attention there, but also in the sense of sustainability. A few words about Aurubis for those of you who don't know us that well. We are headquartered in Germany, in Hamburg, and we are currently on 3 continents, but in 20 countries. We have about 7,200 employees, are in business for 160 years, since end of April this year. And we are leading, or one of the leading companies in copper recycling, as well as copper production or refined copper production. And we bring out more than 20 other metals as well as sulfuric acid. So we are more like a multi-metal company, but with copper at our core. Focusing now directly on our copper products, we produce more than 1 million tons of copper cathodes in our tank houses or smelters and tank houses in Europe. And we produce roughly 900,000 tons of wire rod in our 4 locations in Europe. It always takes a while until it clicks. I think the pictures are too large. Let's see. No. No. Sorry. Okay, here it is. Oh, see, now it's too fast. Sorry about that. Well, anyway, I will just continue to talk while hopefully the right slide will show up in a moment. Our business model is pretty much about circularity. Yeah, so here you see it. No, we always have this time lap, and yeah, maybe I manage at some point to show you the right slide. So we do start with primary raw materials that we purchase from miners, and also we start with secondary materials. So different recycling materials, obviously. And we do smelt and refine them and further process them into, as I mentioned, copper cathodes, as well as then from cathodes into different, there it is. I hope it stays for a moment. Into wire rod, for example, as the largest product, yeah, but also a couple of 100,000 tons of continuous cast shapes, which could then end up in flat rolled products, which could also end up in one of the cables in the grid. And we also produce bars and profiles, which are, for example, used for electrical transfer as well. And of course, within our production, within the production of our customers, pre-consumer, but also post-consumers, we do have scraps available that we are recycling then in the different methodologies. And also here, it's important that we always look at the most efficient way to recycle. So if it's possible to recycle something as direct melt scrap into directly one of the casting furnaces, that's of course better than having to run everything through the smelter, which is necessary if you have for example, printed circuit boards or more complex scraps. So our supply base is therefore very diversified, different products, again, primary as well as secondary. And we also purchase globally there. Our network of 6 smelters in Europe and 1 new smelter being ramped up currently in the US. Also provide supply security there. And the whole circular system, closing the loop, is something we offer and we discuss all the way down in the value chain, and possibly with several of you who are participating here today. And what is also important to mention, copper is infinitely recyclable. So what Olivier touched on already, the copper industry has ever recycled what is available to recycle. Speaking a bit of where we are located, you see several sites here in Europe, and just pointing out that our wire rod, which is necessary for cables, is produced in 2 sites in Germany, which is in Hamburg and in Emmerich, and in 1 site in southern Italy, in Avellino, as well as in Olen in Belgium. So besides that, we have a network of smelters, we do have a network of rod lines as well. And it's very much important to see that also holistically as a network, because there are different flows of metals in different stages between the sites to also there optimize and bring out as much as possible of the respective metals in our products, and then refine them, produce and provide to the market a supply security through redundancy also of our lines. You touched on that a bit, Olivier. This is a different perspective to look at it. We do have an increase in copper demand globally, and it requires definitely both recycling, but also primary materials to serve that demand. And unlike some other reports that you can nowadays read in every local newspaper, we do believe that there is enough copper available. So the industry has proven that over the last more than a century to be able to keep up with the additional requirements, and also to ensure that what is coming out of the life cycles, the materials are being recycled. Now, coming a bit closer into how we take care of that. I already mentioned that we have the both streams, recycling and primary materials. We actually call that the powerful duo, because this is how we can serve then altogether the global demand in copper. But what I would like to point out here is also to make sure you're looking at the right figures. You're comparing apples with apples. We've heard from Olivier the figure of 50% recycled content in Europe, which is in semi-finished products. So that includes brass tubes, for example. Yeah, so that is not refined copper. On the refined copper side, where we are looking at when we are talking about a cathode, we are at 44% recycled content, which is a very high number, actually. If you compare that to the global figure, that's only between 13 and 14%. So if you look at the global demand for refined copper is actually mostly used for wire rod manufacturing. That is more what you're comparing with. So what I would like to introduce you as really the heart of the case study, let's say, or the best practices, our Tomorrow Metals approach. Tomorrow Metals is our sustainability label, where we promise to our customers and their end customers, but also to our suppliers, that we are state of the art when it comes to, let's call it a holistic approach on sustainability. What does it mean? Holistic. We have asked a couple of years ago our customers, okay, what is important to you when it comes to sustainability? And from that, we have derived the 4 pillars that we are working on, whereby one is responsibility, the other one is environmental impact, of course, decarbonisation, and then also circularity. So focusing sustainability only on one criterion to us doesn't really serve the purpose. We take the holistic approach also on these topics, and we take the holistic approach if we look at figures that I will show you on the next slides. It's always an average of the full production that we have in our group, in the network. We're not differentiating, therefore, between green products and brown products, or whatever you would like to call it. For us, the task for our society to decarbonize is holistic tasks. And also it has to be clear that we cannot decarbonize from today to tomorrow in all the sites the same way. One is, of course, the costs to it, but also it is about technology available in different parts of the world, in different countries. Yeah. As an example, when we look at our largest site in Hamburg, it will be very important that we have hydrogen available. In our site in Pierdop, we have the largest solar park built in Bulgaria. So we take very different measures depending on availability of technology and time. So we've done already a lot there, which you can see when you look at our LCAs and the carbon footprint of our copper, where we are here showing you copper cathodes and wire rod. And that difference is also very important when it comes to specifying or comparing figures one with the other. What you want to look at, if you are in the cable industry, you want to look at the carbon footprint of the wire rod, not of the cathode, because wire rod is always a blend of different cathodes in that case. So meaning the cable producer needs the wire rod carbon footprint, not the cathode carbon footprint. A wire rod producer needs the cathode carbon footprint, full clear. And therefore, wire rod, we don't yet have as many figures as for cathodes, but they are available. We publish our figures, by the way, every year in October for LME Week. And you can see that we have come quite a way on both, on the cathodes as well as wire rod the last years. And with all our products, we are substantially below industry average. So you can call that low carbon copper. And yeah, also Olivier and colleagues at the ICA, we are working together with other producers of wire rod to also now come out with a PCR, so that there's more standardization in the industry. We are always looking at cradle to gate figures, by the way. And also a quick look on the recycling quotas, but also here I share with what Olivier said. It's good to look at it, but for different reasons than looking at, specifying what is low carbon, because recycling is a part of it, but it's not the full picture. And it can show you or give you some idea of circularity, but overall, the more holistic approach, we believe, is if you look at comparable LCA figures, so the comparable carbon footprint figures. Oh, and maybe another point to mention, global availability of recycling materials. Olivier, that's what you touched on as well. It's also important that we look at that from a regional perspective. So it's there are also different ways how societies recycle. I think in Europe, especially, there are many companies, not only Aurubis, in the copper value chain, investing in really state-of-the-art recycling. And it's important that we take care that we domestically also recycle what the supply chain brings out. Yeah, end-of-life cables, but also pre-consumer, and so on, to ensure that these stay in Europe so they can be recycled in the best manner and be fed back into the supply chain. Last but not least, since we have many end customers, I think also here in the call, I would like to introduce you just briefly to our concept, copper on account. It's a way where, even a TSO could purchase copper from us, which is more like a bookkeeping scenario. So where you can serve a couple of different purposes. You can have supply security because the copper you purchased, will come to you in different steps of the supply chain. And it will come also with our Tomorrow Metals sustainability promise. You will get my contact details, of course. They are available also here on the last slide. When it shows up, here it is. So me and my colleagues are always happy to discuss this with you also in further detail. And in the handout you will receive, we also added some more detailed slides on what our different pillars of Tomorrow Metals mean, which measures we have already taken as Aurubis, but since it's only 15 minutes, right? And I hope I was roughly in time, I decided to keep them out of the presentation for today. Thank you very much, Natalia, and everyone.
Thanks a lot, Tanya, for your presentation. Quite insightful. And I already see some questions on the Slido. I do see one question also on the chat, and I'll ask Sameh to also put it on the Slido so that we can manage it through there. And before we go to the Q&A session, I will then pass the word to Christoph from Europa Cable, who will then share some industry insights from the cable side. Christoph, I think you're muted.
Of course, the usual trick. Thank you. Yes, good afternoon to everyone. I have the challenge of keeping a little bit of time for the questions, so I'll try to do my best. Good afternoon. As I said, my name is Christophe Richon. I'm working for Europa Cable, looking mainly after the sustainability-related topics. Quick word about who we are. We are the association representing the leading wire and cable manufacturers and also manufacturers of accessories in Europe, about 50 so members. You can see here the list of, and we are very honored and lucky to have also ICA Europe among our associated members. What we do is basically two big things. Europe's decarbonisation through the development of grids, but I guess this is no secret for all of you who are listening, joining this webinar, and also the digitalization side which is, of course, dependent of the decarbonisation. And all this, of course, is achieved through cables. We also have a big activity around safety and sustainability at large. What I would like to share with you this afternoon is how we manage recycled contents in copper of copper in cables. What are our members, some of our members' initiatives, and also challenges ahead. Maybe just to start with, because when Natalia contacted me about this webinar, she said, well, could you talk about collaborative efforts? And actually, there is one form of efforts around recycling and circularity with cables that we don't necessarily master, but they are present and they are quite important, as you can see. But yeah, so this is the joke apart. How do our members manage the recycled contents? First of all, recycled copper, as both Olivier and Tanya have mentioned, is of course already largely in use at several manufacturers. And with that, there's ongoing research to increase gradually the share of recycled copper. What is important, and you also touched upon that, Tanya, is that we need a high purity of material to maintain the high level of electrical conductivity. So not any recycled copper will do. So this is, of course, a very heavy constraint that we need in the way we procure copper. And another issue which we are facing now is that there is a number of chain of custody models which allow to estimate the renewable and recycled contents, and not every model is saying the same thing and has the same advantages and drawbacks. So this is the kind of things which also is currently something that needs to be tackled. So yeah, in a nutshell, we are on the upward slope in terms of increasing the share of recycled copper in new cables. How do our members contribute also, and how do they collaborate? Well, some of them have organized, for instance, buyback services of unused cable length, which allow to feed the circular loops in copper. Also, I was mentioning this increasing share of recycled copper in cables. There's already some projects which are totaling up to 100% of recycled copper, believe it or not. Also, a number of cable recycling services are offered by the cable manufacturers, such as decommissioning, collection, and even processing. So yeah, all in all, multiplying initiatives. This is not the end of the story. More to come. Watch this space to collect and to valorize the copper in cables. Some challenges ahead. I was mentioning the chain of custody models, but also the fact that standards today do exist for recycled contents, but are not necessarily made mandatory, which creates a little bit of confusion and an even approach in the market. Europa Cable has been advocating quite some points in the ongoing debate with the creation by the European Commission of the Circular Economy Act and the possible revision of the W3E directive, where we really want, and that's really in the heart of collaborative efforts, we really need a clear allocation of responsibilities in the recovery and the recycling cables between all the actors in the value chain. Not only the manufacturers, not only the suppliers of raw materials, but also the owners of the and the operators of the networks, and all those the recyclers and all those stakeholders that intervene in the chain. Also, one big concern is the leakage of end-of-life cables and scrap. recently a figure has come up that China alone imports over 2.3 million tons of recycled copper raw materials annually. And there are substantial amounts of end-of-life cables that are exported through gray market, informal or illicit channels. Also, there's a need to harmonize practices to guarantee a level playing field, again, referring to this chain of custody model issue, but also applying standards such as the EN 5557, which defines how recycled content should be assessed in cables. And also a great disparity of rules in the European countries, which don't make it easy to actually work in a circular way, especially for those stakeholders who are active over several countries. And finally, well, just to summarize, we are very much for a case-by-case approach, not a one-size-fits-all approach in the upcoming legislation. Because of the diversity of products in installation, you don't retrieve a cable in a building as you would at the bottom of the sea, for instance, just to give two diametrically opposed examples. There's a number of economic, environmental, and technical criteria which need to be taken into account, and they really are different from one cable type and one installation type to the next. So this also to say that the extended producer responsibility scheme is a very good scheme for consumer products, but definitely not for cables. And yes, as you could see, cooperation along the value chain does work, is in place, will continue to develop, and this will require a favorable regulatory framework to make it grow and to foster it. Thank you for your attention, and over back to you, Natalia.
Thanks a lot, Christoph, and the other speakers as well. So, as I mentioned, now we will move to the Q&A part of the session. As I shared in the chat, please make sure that your questions are in Slido, as we don't have as much time as normally for the questions. Make sure that you also vote for those you would like to have answered. And now we can start with maybe Renault's question. Maybe the two of them. So he answers questions about how we can support. Just changed. But how can we support circularity that aligns with affordability, considering the price tag, and also the key factors about driving a higher cost for circular solutions. Then maybe I'll pass the word to.
Okay, sorry. I got a bit confused with the questions moving around.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
the green one now, right? How can we
Exactly.
support that aligns with affordability when? Well, I can speak for Aurubis here first concretely, where, as I mentioned, for us, we do not differentiate. Everything that we produce is low carbon copper, and we are striving for doing that. And therefore, if you want to guide it that maybe our pricing might be higher that of others, also it's tough for me to comment on that since I wouldn't know. So I can maybe take it from that angle on costs. Yeah, of course, there's costs to decarbonizing. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is no doubt. And as I also mentioned, technology-wise, not everything is available yet, and so on. Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
You know,
Tanya.
price questions are always a bit tough to take, and
yes. Maybe also one point is that what would be the alternative? So if we don't decarbonize, what is the cost of inaction? I think that
exactly.
is also a point.
So, I mean, we are interested from our perspective, of course, yeah, are, customers ready to pay for it? Do our, and how far are our investments, they are even, valued, yeah? So that's why it would be important that there is somewhere at the end customer or at governments who are investing, that there is the perspective of that there is additional costs to decarbonize, yeah. But I've also been at conferences or wherever where there were discussions around or podcasts, and I've sometimes also heard the comment that future should be decarbonized, and who doesn't, like you said about Natalia, rather has to pay a malus for not being able to offer such products.
Point. Okay, so I'll mark this as answered. Then we have the second question, given the discussion about physical traceability. So maybe I'll highlight that before it moves. And mass balance approaches, which approach do you consider most suitable for copper products? I think that also relates to Tanya and Christoph presentation.
Maybe I can just give a general view on that.
Of course.
I think that when we talk about chain of custody model, we should, for copper, consider mass balance approaches. There are two different kinds of mass balance approaches, roughly. There is the rolling average and there is the credit. And I think both are applicable to copper. I think what is very important there is to keep the physical traceability, so staying close to the physical flows.
Perfect.
Yeah, and maybe on this one, I'm never sure. I mean, I know Annalena, so I'm pretty sure she is referring to the very official definition of mass balance. But we've in the past also here and there referred to mass balance when it came to the book and claim approach, right? And that is exactly where it gets a bit tricky, because that's not the physical flows anymore, what you meant, Olivier, right? So physical flows should always, to our understanding, be as accurate. Like we would never want to be exposed to anything that can come close to, greenwashing claims or whatever. So we wouldn't focus on only booking something and then claiming, a different figure than the average approach that can really be considered, that can be calculated. Nevertheless, if you look at smelter processes, you will not be able to track physically the molecule of, this and that mine coming to this and that end product. Yeah. So that's where there's limitations, of course, to physical traceability.
Thanks a lot, both you, Olivier and Tanya. And I think, Olivier, you also would like to reply to this one on the global copper demand by sector.
It's a funny question, in fact, because the question is the answer is quite tricky. I will give you just one example. There are 70% of the global copper demand, which is going to conductivity applications. Okay, 70%. Okay. Now let's look at the construction, the building construction sector. This is the second market for copper, but there are already conductivity applications into this sector. So it's quite difficult to give an answer, because of course there are a lot of uses for copper, but it depends which, let's say, property of copper you are looking at, if it's conductivity, if it's thermal conductivity, etc. So I'm sorry, because it's very difficult to answer, but really the point that we should keep in mind is that really 70% of the use of copper is going into conductivity application. Okay.
Great, thanks a lot, Olivier. Maybe I'll just include a question from the chat, because some people are not able to assets, Lido. So there was a question about the risk for recycling rates, if that could decline over time, if there is a mismatch between the increasing demand and the limited availability of scrap. So this is related to the demand, so trying to answer as many questions as possible.
Okay, let me try to give an answer. I already started to explain a little bit, but the idea of having targets or mandates for recycling content is not a good idea at all, because copper scrap need to be used where it is the most useful. Okay, and I cannot enter into too much consideration because finally it's a complex story. But you have low-grade scrap, medium-grade scrap, high-grade scrap, and even more. And each one has a clear role to play in the recycling value chain. And you cannot change the game. Otherwise, it will lead to a strong distortions, and it's no good. And I have a presentation entirely dedicated to this, but unfortunately, we are limited by time. And so, but be sure that the rational use of scrap need to be kept as it is now. Otherwise, there will be imbalances everywhere.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Olivier. Then we'll move to the question from Devi. So how the development of AI centers could affect availability and pricing of copper, if there are any risks for grid operators from one side?
Well, the thing is that I really don't have the mandate to discuss price or cost or whatever else, so sorry about that. But definitely, data centers will increase the copper demand. But I just want to get back, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. You know, it was the rise of the electrical vehicles. And everybody says, hey, there will be a huge demand for copper due to electrical vehicles. And finally, it was not a game changer. And the thing is that when you look at, for instance, power cable, when you look at data center, they represent only a fraction, only a little fraction of copper demand. Sorry, and just one figure. Do you know what is the share of the power cable among the global, not the global, the European copper demand? It's less than 3%. So sure, there will be more subsea cable due to huge installation of offshore winds capacities. There will be new interconnection between countries. But once again, it's not a game changer. It's a little fraction of the copper demand worldwide. And it's the same for data center. Data center is only part of copper use. It will increase the demand for copper, but not in at a pace or in a percentage that will be a game changer for the global copper demand worldwide.
Thanks a lot, Olivier. And then looking to more the sustainability side of things, Judith mentions the different metrics that could be used. I'll pass to Tanya, I believe, looking at this more holistic approach, perhaps.
I'm not sure I understand everything of that question. The climate change impact of of copper is relatively low. So when it comes to selecting primary supply sources, it's indeed very multifold. Yeah, and there are, of course, all kinds of other criteria that come into the picture than only sustainability criteria. Yeah. We are, of course, overall, when we also conduct our LCAs, looking not only at carbon, but also other footprints. I am not a specialist that can now, tell you any details on ecotoxicity, ecotoxicity. But we have a very detailed LCA on our website available for all our products that we have, and I think you find something in there. So, meaning, yes, we look at sustainability criteria. Especially also there, we look at responsibility criteria when it comes to primary sources. That is, of course, essential. We are supporting the copper mark and try to purchase from such. Yeah, but even on the carbon footprint part, which seems to be the easier one, there is not yet a full, transparent and correct data set available. Yeah, even there, there are still some that haven't calculated that. So I would doubt that at this stage, making purchasing decisions, you can look at all this in very, very detail when it comes to the figures, because they might just not be available. But we are certainly looking at the responsibility part all over. I hope it answered the question in an okay manner. I know it might not be, to the full point there. And also here, happy to, go into further discussions with our specialists on such topics in a bilateral manner.
Thanks a lot, Tanya. Then we move to the responsibility when it comes to preventing scrap copper leakage. I think it was mentioned by Christoph. Any of you want to take that one?
I would have an answer to that, but maybe Christoph first.
Go ahead, Tanya.
There has been an attempt from the copper industry, from let's call it a coalition of the willing, where Aurubis is a part of, and several other companies as well. I think some are also attending this call. Where we approach the EU Commission on this topic, and where there is a working group currently in European Metals, another association focused on the more political advocacy. I'm not sure, Christoph, and how you are involved there as Europa Cable, but supporting, this advocacy work will be, of course, helpful.
Yeah, no, it's, TSO's responsibility is interesting to see it from that angle. From a regulatory perspective, of course, what we need is market surveillance. What we need is prevention measures. So we know that the Commission is looking at putting a tax on export of aluminum, something that should be announced in September. That might be a direction as well. Now coming to the TSO specific responsibility, I guess that this is something that they should decide for themselves, if I may say so. But especially looking at how they are organized in terms of decommissioning and retrieving cables, and see exactly what direction these are taking. And that's probably, it's more of a moral responsibility, I would say, to be a fair player in the value chain. But that's probably the first and foremost approach that could be taken.
I fully agree, Christoph. Of course, I think there are, if you make sure that where you're selling, you know where it's ending up.
Exactly.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Christoph and Tanya. Now we have again a question about the supply chain side of things, considering China's role as an importer. So how can Europe protect itself, and if you know what is the main reason behind this importation? I guess Olivier would be then our person again.
We try to give a very simple answer. You have to make the difference between the copper mine and the copper refining process. Okay, the copper mines are not in China, but China refines copper. Okay, so it means that they use copper concentrate to make cathode, pure copper. Okay, and as China is the biggest consumer of copper yet, they have simply increased their refining capabilities at a very high level and at the end they import cathode for sure. Okay, but this is the rationale behind. The thing is that Chile is the main copper producer in the world. It provides more than 25% of copper worldwide. And there are mines everywhere in the world, including in Europe. Okay. So while China is the biggest copper importer, is because they have a refining capacity extremely high, because their copper consumption is the highest in the world. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a
And
lot.
yes, and how can Europe protect itself on the copper supply side? It is shown into my presentation. In fact, regarding copper demand, the EU is 70% autonomous. There are only low reliance to importation. It's then 10% of cathode importation, and it's 20% of copper processed in Europe from copper concentrates. Okay, I hope I'm clear.
I believe so.
Okay.
But if any questions remain, please do write to us. And then also asked about the key factors driving. I do know that we are reaching the end of the session, so I'll just answer these two questions and wrap up.
I think so.
I think we've roughly spoken about that. I mean, it's really, if you have to set up your smelters, your foundries in a completely different manner, because they're currently using, natural gas, for example. Yeah, it's where the cost is coming from. It doesn't come as a, free of charge, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if I may complete, I guess I touched upon that also in the few words that I said, but of course there is the entry price, which is definitely going to have a say in that. But with that also the fact that we are facing multiple regulations around circularity across different EU states, that adds to the complexity, and the fact that there is today there are some strong initiatives, but there's still not a sufficiently single circular market in the union that would also reduce the cost because of stronger flows across the union.
Great point, Christophe. And then finally, we have the LCA question. So I think there needs to be some clarification here, maybe from Tanya. You can clarify a little bit, or Olivier, regarding the LCA.
I can. I have some issues to understand clearly the topic, but infinite reuse is definitely the case for copper. But the thing is, when you start an LCA calculation, for instance, you want to make an EPD for 100% recycled material, like a copper tube, like it exists already. You have to use scrap, but you have to use an industrial process. So you use energy, you still use energy. So there is no carbon cost for instance, a cathode coming from Chile, but there is a carbon price for the process itself. Okay, so divide any carbon footprint by infinity and the answer is zero. I not agree. I mean, there are some carbon economy into the process, but still carbon is there, and the carbon footprint is always there. Even if you have say, if we have 100% electrified processes with 100% decarbonized electricity, maybe we can reach be close to zero, but the zero doesn't exist when it comes to LCA.
Perfect. Comes also to the question of defining the scope, and I'm guessing for the LCA as well. Tanya, would you like to?
Yeah, I would just like to point out that there is an interesting question, at least I find from Ender in the chat, which is what are the most significant changes you have observed in the customer requirements for sustainable copper in recent years beyond the recycled copper content ratio? So, I mean, maybe the last year it was like not increasing month by month, because before I would have said month by month, more customers are interested in the topic, are asking questions. And especially for us, and which I fully agree, I think it was on Christoph's presentation, it's so important to discuss across the different steps of the value chain to make sure. So I highly appreciate this webinar so much, Natalia, really. To make sure that, who is at the end of the supply chain and, writes tenders and specifications, that they have good knowledge on what they're doing, because how could we expect them to be experts in copper? Yeah. Nevertheless, there have been some, and I think that started especially in the automotive industry. They were just writing specifications. They wanted to be, I don't know, the first ones, coming up with something like, yes, the beloved 100% recycling, or, whatever it is. That to me doesn't seem, educated, and it doesn't seem to take the holistic overall picture. That is important. And it's a risk, because at some point they force the supply chain further up to, agree to these requirements, because of course they need to be part of the tenders and whatever it is. Yeah. So I highly appreciate that this has been changing quite a bit, I would say the last year and a half to two, that there is, really more interest to understand, and not only, write seemingly easy, understandably specifications, because it's not. And we've seen, yes, first with the automotives, and now the last year to two, we see that there's quite something coming from TSOs and, utility companies. So in the energy cable market, what I've heard in the US, interestingly, is that the data centers there are the ones that are looking into sustainability, and they're coming up with these discussions. So that's a bit of a difference, I think, in Europe. Yeah. So, and I really think, when I compare also discussions we had at the Coiltech and a seminar with ICA, and some of you as participants and speakers, that the understanding is indeed increasing, and that the focus is getting more to, we need standardization, yes, and it needs to be on the carbon footprint discussion more than on.
And if I may just add one line to that, the European institutions are currently reviewing the public procurement rules, and sustainable procurement criteria need to be absolutely embedded into that. And as Europa Cable, we did contribute already with proposals for sustainable procurement criteria.
Thanks a lot, both of you. And public procurement is also one of the topics that we discussed in previous discussions. But we are running out of time, so I'll just wrap up and thank the three of you, so the three speakers who joined us today, Olivier, Tanya, and Christoph, for the very insightful presentations. I hope this helped create awareness about the challenges, but also inspire people, GSOs, to think about their circular approaches in a holistic way. I would like to also invite everyone to sign up for RGI's newsletter, and also mention that the presentations and recordings will be available, but also that this is a series. So this was one part, and that the second session that we hosted, and we hope to keep this conversation going. There's a lot of questions open, and we hope to bring awareness to more points, including the public procurement part of things. So thank you for everyone who joined as well, participants who asked the questions, and we'll see you in the next round. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.